There are some things that cannot be explained. These things will appear often in life and cause us to fight between two reasoning realities. Is it logic and true, or just a figment of our imagination trying to give us the life we live a little more excitement and justification? Most of us will enjoy the latter because there are some things we will never truly understand. We use what can be cited at first glance as our explanation. We humans as a race need something to believe in. We need understanding, and we need solution. I know there is something here. I feel it. But what exactly is this substance, this thing, this being? No, I am not a religious man, nor do I even speculate God as being a person who watches and calculates every movement and passive thought exhaled by the creatures he supposedly created. I do not feel that man is judging me and already condemning me to hell. He is not that something. Do you believe that for every action you take, an opposite reaction is then created for you to walk into? This could be immediate or at some point in your life where you're sat there going, what was it you did that deserves this? Whatever it is you choose to believe in, trust in me when I say at the end of it all you're going to have to believe in something, or you'll never trust anything. I try to trust in the guidance of witchcraft, and it has proven to me time and time again that effective sources of energy will willingly bind with my blood. My father came from a lineage of grey hairs, known for their connection to the earth. My mother, a white hair. Her power to bond the elements of air and water was notorious. So was her mother's before that. And it even stretched back to 10 generations of incredible Wiccans that this earth had ever seen. The only issue is their reluctance to wield the power they have been honoured with. That goes for both my parents. My father spends his days growing lavender, incarnations, sage, or whatever else it is he feels is appropriate to support life on Earth. My mother simply tells him when it's going to snow. It's embarrassing. Between them they are potentially the most powerful coupling to ever entwine, and yet they choose to farm flowers for a living. Then there is me. Bright, silky blonde hair, eyes jet green, ivory skin not quite warm enough to hide the snakes of blue veins that slither close to the surface, but golden enough so I never look sick. I have never resembled my mother's porcelain frame or my father's simple blend of chestnut and greys. My looks can be rather striking, and so it's not a wonder they insist I am not originally their own. For my entire life, they have told me that my mother did not give birth to me. Mother told me I was adopted from a neighbour, and father told me he found me in the woods. Yet, if you remember, as I said earlier, effective sources of energy will bind with my blood. Now, how could that be if I'm not really the heir to a vast ancestry of witches? It seems to me that they lied. Now, why would they do that? Why would they insist their child is from a different background? At what age did they get scared? When I was 3 and talked back? When I was born? Or was it when I grew into my hair and they realized I was something more than they ever could be? Some things can be explained if you want to explain them. For years I fought between logic and my imagination. I had taken my parents' explanation as the truth without question. I believed them. I trusted them. But I yearned to be like them. To be able to speak to the flowers, to fly through the air, and be the eye of every storm as it raged down its destruction. I wanted that thrill, that power. But they told me I was different. I would never be like them, and whoever told me I would were lying. Turns out I wasn't like them anyway. I was even better. I knew there was something. I felt it. My veins would wriggle under my skin. My eyes glowed in the dark. Life circled me whenever I wished for it and removed itself whenever I didn't. When I was 10, I learned that most other people couldn't speak through their minds to animals. They didn't know that I could, but they understood I had a connection, a natural way with wildlife. Grandma Gray used to tell me the story of the boy who saved the sheep. It was a cute little tale of a farmer's boy speaking to a sheep, warning them of the wolf threat, so when it came to it, they took care of one another and no sheep were lost to the teeth of wolves ever again. But I knew the wolf needed to eat those sheep. They were his dinner. They didn't know that about me either. When I was 17, I found the Greys' family grimoire. I say found, but it was Grandma who delivered it. Believe it or not, this hidden sacred family heirloom that had hundreds of years of secrets and spells within could simply be delivered to me by merely asking for it, without even needing to utter the words. Strange, no? Inside was a fascinating read. Did you know that the resin of the dragon blood tree enhances the potency of spells? No? Neither did I. I also found that hyssop is a beautiful natural way of relieving illness of the bacterial kind, most often found within the lungs. 1 dose mixed with your favourite tea and poof, gone. But combine it with the pulled leaves of a redbud tree and just the slight touch of ash from the midday burning of a eucalyptus, and you might find yourself in disastrous consequences. The infection in your lungs will spread, shutting down every major organ as death waits patiently for up to 3 days. Painful, slow, and terrifying for the sufferer. Oh, and don't forget the spell chants, otherwise you're simply just giving them an unpleasant cup of tea. They'll get sicker, but they won't die. There was also something else I stumbled across that I found so intriguing that I almost couldn't believe my eyes. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Have you ever found yourself in the middle of something that opens you up to 1,000 questions with very unfulfilling answers? Do you believe that things are meant to be the way they are and there's a reason for it all? For example, the boy who saved the sheep. What if the wolf ate that sheep and lived another day to find himself out in the wilderness chasing a man who happens to be a very bad man, trying to hurt an innocent girl? His instincts is to attack the man, and therefore it saves the little girl. Now, if the sheep had stood up to this wolf in the first place and let him starve to death, he wouldn't be there with the energy to stop this man. This results in 1 dead wolf, 1 bad man free to torture and kill a little girl. Oh, and let's not forget, 1 safe sheep. Let me try to explain. When it comes to matters of natural course, we must let it run because we have no idea what we are meddling with when we try to veer it off track. Which is exactly what my mother and father tried to do with me. Now back to this intriguing information I found in this fantastic ancestral collection. In the late 1800s, there was one member of the grey-hair family who really took me by surprise. My great-great-great Uncle Aare. He was described as being the ugly duckling in the family. Long yellow hair, jet green eyes, and lightly browned skin. Spectacularly different to the chocolate and silver colours that embedded itself into the usual gene pool. He also had some other interesting traits about him that I most definitely couldn't overlook. Turns out great Uncle Aare had more than a few similarities with myself. He too could talk to animals by just thinking it. Not just animals, but humans too. More intriguing was the discovery that not only did he speak to these others, but he commanded them, and whatever my uncle desired of them he received. At first it was just the small things. People were eager to help him maintain his garden, or deliver his post, make his dinner, or even give him a nice percentage of their earnings. Then, after a few years of being served in menial tasks so honourably by these friends of his, he wondered if they would go a little further. Sure enough, within a year he had hundreds of protectors who laid their life on the line to treat him like a king. He had money, an exquisite manner, and anything he desired close by. He had every woman he ever wanted, including Rose, the beauty he grew up with but always said no to him in the past. She was now his wife, his caged queen. My Uncle Aare was becoming the most powerful man on earth, so naturally he grew some enemies. Jealousy is a bitter trait. Eventually, Aire's enemies became in such great numbers that when a magical Wiccan war came, he succumbed to their combined power. Beings of many families joined forces alongside the Greys. Amongst the many they had Han-Yang sorcerers, blazing infernos produced by the Red Tips, and even my mother's family, the notorious Whitehairs, let go of their reluctance to embrace their power for this particular issue. Now, I must say, that's a lot of magic. Anyway, they won and he lost. Or did he? I haven't actually been able to find any evidence that he died, and after reading this story, it sounds like death would be the only ending to all his tyranny. It would be the only answer. They say they mutilated him by burning a hole within his frontal left lobe of his brain, but they never said they took his life. Now, why would that be? Reading further on, I discovered that Uncle Aare is a once-in-a-blue-moon kind of guy. He is a power unlike any other. His potency comes from reptiles. Hence the eyes. Once upon a time, long, long ago, a new creation was conjured up with the blood of alligators, serpents, and lizards. When any magical blood is mixed with any animal, they can develop a bond that can go as far as speaking with them or even becoming one of them. Interesting. No? They wanted to create the ultimate being, so they chose a mystical human with the ancestry of earth speakers and godlike powerhouses that controlled the elements and mixed them with the genetic traits of what they believed were the greatest in evolution, the reptile. Dating back around 300 million years ago, this incredible group of animals had an extremely diverse evolutionary history that defied global devastations, even the Ice Age. They rose from the seas, owned the land, and they're even the reasons for the birds in the sky. So, combine all that with the blood of a human with magic beyond most, and you have a Frankenstein's Godzilla, a hybrid, the ultimate powerful being. This new evolutionary creature was hatched, and now took a permanent place on Earth. Due to the mystical power within, their energy, their soul, would never die. So when the physical life of this being ends, their mystical spirit awaits another. Great Uncle Aare came from the love of a white and a grey. It was always a forbidden coupling, but they chose to see past the horror story they had been told since they were children. There had been no evidence that it was wrong. It was just a tale. So it was born again, the first in over 1,000 years into a world in which it had never seen. It was consumed with money, with sex, with human control. Life was a grand party, and he was the #1 guest. He was so distracted there was actually no real awareness to what his true strength was. Remember when I asked you if you'd ever found yourself in the middle of something that opens you up to so many questions with unfulfilling answers? Well, that's how I felt when reading all of this. I learned the history, the creation, but not the reason as to why I am here today. What happened to Aare? If he didn't die back then, when did he die? If what I read is true, then he needs to have died at least 20 years ago when my parents got together and decided to mate. Now, they aren't stupid people. What happened to Aare happened about 150 years ago, not far enough back to be merely just a tale of terror. I've heard of whites and greys mating for decades. These people and my parents were not scared. They knew what could happen. It only leaves me to think that somehow something kept him alive and maimed, trapping his spirit for all these years. How far people will go for love. When reading all of this, I did find some details missing, especially when it comes to me. Without a shadow of a doubt, I am this hybrid of magic. I mean, my eyes are green, my hair yellow, but my abilities are curious. All these years I've had a way with nature. We understood each other. I could never control it, though. My grandma bringing me this grimoire was by chance. I wanted it bad enough. I asked for it inside, and she delivered, but this rarely happens. And just like Aare, there was another who I loved growing up, but they didn't love me. Even when I asked them to, demanded they do, begged that they would look at me like I was everything to them. But they never did. What did you do? What did you do to me? I know energy binds with me. I feel it. I tried out one of my father's spells. I grew a 100-year-old oak tree overnight with just a seed and a few words. I try to trust in the witchcraft, but it appears I am nothing but an illusion. No, this wasn't something done before I was conceived, otherwise my parents wouldn't have been so scared of me. This was done when they realized who I was. That's it. When Mother was pregnant, they didn't know. They don't see doctors, they talk to spirits. But the spirits didn't tell them, otherwise there would have been an abortion, or would there? Did she try to kill me in the womb? No, that's not in her nature. They would have had me on one condition. They make it a controlled upbringing. So to the family they adopted me, to the spirits they bound my powers. If I had no way of knowing what I was, where I came from, and how much they diffused me whilst I was young, then there was a chance, providing they still overlooked my life, that I could be controlled and still be their son. Now, isn't that something? My parents, the powerhouse couple driven by love with every choice they make. Somehow they kept Uncle Aare damaged but alive, and somehow he died unknowingly just before they had me. So now I know what I am and what I'm made of. What is there to stop me from being just that? They bound my powers. They lied for years. But it can't be just the spirits that knew this secret. Grandma Grey only had an inkling, so it wasn't sweet little Gran. But you knew, didn't you, Dimitri? The keeper of secrets. The guardian of the gate to my power. You watched over our family for years. The nosy neighbour. Always conveniently at the doorstep whenever I wasn't happy. There was a surge of electricity that tingled in my feet when you were around us. So I always wondered, could it be that you were one of us? Your family is Romanian gypsy, that you never hid from me. A good lie only works when there is a truth to protect it. I read of gypsies. Balancers of magic. Big believers in karma. Me too. Turns out you're very good at binding witches and reining in their power. Convenient, wouldn't you say? Do you know why I really don't believe there is a God? It's because I don't think there is anything greater than what I am. But unfortunately you tampered with that. You stole my energy and I want it back. You look shook. Surprised? I mean, if snatching you from your bed in the middle of the night, dragging you through the woods and holding you hostage inside one of my father's flower tents wasn't enough to give it away, then surely by now you understand that I know everything you did, and any retaliation at this point, magical or otherwise, would be futile. I might be muted, Dimitri, but I still have power. You see, it was quite some time ago I found out about my uncle, so it has given me quite some time to learn exactly how much I was capable of whilst grounded within my shackles. Quite some time to think, to learn more, and to visit Romania, Transylvania, the village Viskri. Your sister was a lovely woman. She couldn't unbind me, but she did mistakenly teach me a few things about how I get you two. Would you like me to show you? It'll help me gain access to your mind and also enjoy a little bit of payback at the same time. Hold still. These vines tighten the more that you wriggle, and I'm not sure we can fit any more soil in your mouth. This won't take long. Ancestors find me, wield me, charge me. With the power of my blood and the venom from the serpent, you will obey me. Let me into your mind. The drawbridge clunked and slammed to a halt, paving a way forwards from the ashen steel gateway that towered as a hideous monstrosity overlooking the castle walls. Layer after layers of barricades and bridges protected the fortress nestled deep within. Fear rippled up Dimitri's spine, forcing out a blood-curdling cry as his body was dragged by the arms across the coarse grit and frayed wooden planks, every needle and stony dagger tearing at his skin. The air was filled with nauseating fumes of rotting flesh, growing stronger through every doorway. He retched, and he heaved, and repelled the stench that vandalized his body, but no matter how hard he tried, nothing would come of it. The two creatures who had hauled Dimitri into the fortress halted and slammed him into the ground. By this point he could no longer screech a word, for fear had finally taken his voice. Shaking, he gazed up at the two who had a hold of him. These were no ordinary men. Their faces were scarred heavily, and their muscles burst through their skin. Their eyes, a harsh green with black slits. Blood leaked from their mouths. Above him, creeping clouds of blackened smoke smothered the ceiling. Hostile nests of squirming vines fused to the walls and hung amidst the storm that loomed above. Skulking creatures clawed into the cracks of this confined cave. Their eyes glowed within the shadows, tightly fixed upon their new guest. The clacking strain of metal rings vibrated the air as the final drawbridge had been heaved up, locking them all into darkness. The stage was set for Dimitri's endless depression. The intimidation of silent jerks breath out of his twitching and groaning body. An abrupt explosion of flames ignites a trail of torches leading from Dimitri to a stone door crumbling free from the wall it hides in. The thick block of stone scrapes open, oozing velvet whips of smoke that quietly fill the room into smoke. The creatures bow their heads. Slinking around the frame, a serpent slips through the opening and glides across the floor to confront Dimitri. Striking scales of black and a bright yellow coat is out of form. 2 spiked horns sit above 2 menacing, wide green eyes. A long, forked black tongue slides out of its mouth, teasing the air with a flutter of the tips. Hypnotized by the beauty of this animal, he gazes deep into its eyes, unaware of it morphing into the shape of man. Let me in. Let me into your mind. The serpent hushed. He takes Dimitri by the shoulders, smoothing his newly formed palms down his arms, and brings forward his wrists. Stepping back, the serpent keeps his gaze compulsive as one of his fellow creatures makes his way to the scorching clay kiln beside them. Constructed into stone, this crude furnace held 1,500 degrees smelted iron. Go to him. With his arms out and hands together, Dimitri brings himself over to the kiln and places his wrists onto a rest. Molten metal is poured over, fusing his wrists together into a permanent restraint. An excruciating screech tears from his throat. His eyes roll into the back of his head. Look at me. Screaming, Dimitri grips his focus back onto the serpent. You are mine. The room blasts into fire, bursting his skin into melting sores. As the lids from his eyes scorch, blood trickles down his blistering face. The serpent spits out a wild, unruly laugh as the ends of his silky blonde hair singes in the flames. Blood fills Dimitri's mouth. The loose stones beneath them shake as the ground rumbles, rapidly deepening until the floor snaps and shoots sharp gashes through the stone. A surge of wind ruptures from below, twisting Dimitri to the floor. The flames cease to exist. 2 green, luminous eyes glare down at him. Dozens more follow, slowly edging closer. Finish him. As Dimitri lay trapped in vines, catatonic and tortured inside his mind, the rusty white egg placed in his hands split, revealing the precious head of an infant lizard, pushing his way through. The serpent carefully drizzled the egg with a handful of red liquid. Electricity prickled the ground where he lay, and the little creature's eyes shined. It has been done. Now that was fun, wouldn't you say?